G'day everyone and welcome back to Bennett's Garage. Today we're playing around with transmissions. So I can't really do a lot more with the car because the transmission in it is not very good at all. It takes about 10 minutes to shift into second gear. I've done a lot of research on the transmissions used in these vehicles. So they're a Jatco transmission. They're an N4AEL, which is an electronically controlled 4-speed automatic with overdrive. They weren't only used in this 929, they were used in the Series 5 RX-7, and they were also used, I believe, in like some late 80s, early 90s model Ford Courier, Mazda B2200, B2600, stuff like that. From what I can learn just from Googling around and that, they are essentially the same as the mechanically shifted transmission, which is the 4N71B. So the 4N71B came in a lot of cars, most predominantly here in Australia behind the RB30 and the R31 Skyline and the VL Commodore. But they also used in a whole load of Mazdas, Datsuns, yeah, you name it. So I will just maybe quickly go through some of the similarities between them. This video's not really going to be about the Mazda, it's going to be more about the transmissions. So if you've got a N4AEL 3N71B or a 4N71B in your car, hopefully you can learn something today. So this gearbox here actually isn't the one out of the car, it's another V6 929 gearbox that I bought secondhand just to open it up and have a look at them and see what was inside. I watched a fair few like precision transmissions videos. They've got some wicked content. If you want to learn more about automotive transmissions, then head over there and check out their channel. It's pretty cool. I've pulled manual gearboxes apart before. Didn't really see like there was a lot to them. Once I sort of got into it and you start unbolting things, they do come apart. It's pretty straightforward. The problem is the valve body. I don't know anything about valve bodies. They're quite a complex thing. When I opened this up, the gaskets broke, you know, all ball bearings and springs went everywhere. Having said that, the valve body is the electronically controlled part, so that's got the solenoids in it, which is controlled by the transmission computer. So that's the bit that I actually want to eliminate by switching over to a mechanical transmission, like a transmission that's shifted mechanically with valves and springs as opposed to electronic solenoids. So let's have a look at some of the similarities between these gearboxes. So this gearbox here is a 4N71B. I believe it is out a VL Commodore, but it's the same gearbox as an R31 Skyline that comes behind a RB30. This is a 3N71B out of a Mazda 323, and already you can see fair similarity between them. So if we look at the casing here, from where the bell housing bolts onto the back, and then we look at this box here, from where this part here is bolted onto the casing to the back, they basically look identical. And if we have a look at the casing from the electronic trans, so you can see there that even that one is basically the same. So this part here, between the bell housing and the front casing, which is this unit here, I believe that this is the 4th gear overdrive part. So this is basically what defines the difference between a 3-speed and a 4-speed. So another way of checking this, so I'll just take the pan gasket from the N4AEL, and you can see, same as the 4N71B, same as the 3N71B. So they're essentially just the same transmission casing, and I think they've just got, other than having obvious things like I think the 4-speeds have got more heavy duty internals than the 3-speed, they are pretty much the same casing. The valve bodies and all of that should interchange, which leads me on to the next thing. So I probably could have just swapped a manual valve body or a non-electronic valve body into this transmission. I don't know about this part here where the wires come in for the solenoids, but you could probably pretty easily block this hole. Unfortunately, this transmission's already in pieces and I'm not really too confident putting it together only because I don't know how it came apart. I took it apart a few months ago and I can't remember the sequence or whatever. So yeah, I think my plan for today is to basically change the extension housing and the bell housing onto the VL gearbox. Use the VL converter, because the VL converter is a lot more common and a lot easier to come by or change if I want to put a stallie in it. Probably pretty safe to say no one has ever got a stallie done for a V6 Mazda, like ever. So there is a few discrepancies. I've already tried putting the VL converter into this gearbox and something with the shaft sizes for the lockup clutch I think didn't line up. So I think the V6 gearbox has got a different splined lockup clutch than the VL box. So yeah, other than taking some measurements and bell housing depths and all that kind of thing, got to be careful of that too. Everything should just change over and stick with the VL converter, and then yeah, hopefully just re-drill the flywheel if the torque converter holes don't line up. So alrighty, so I need the extension housing and the output shaft, and I need the bell housing off the V6, and everything else here I'm pretty much just going to put in a box and forget about it. I'll put the VL box on the bench and fire up the time lapse and start pulling it apart, because you can't change the extension housing without pulling all the guts out of the gearbox. And there's a few bits on the trans I'm going to pull off on the floor because I'm a small guy and I can't lift it onto the bench by myself. Shout out to my bro Linton for giving me some proper hammers. He wasn't too fond of me hitting stuff with my panel hammers, so thanks, bro. So I already found our first discrepancy. This bell housing has this solenoid thing and these two oil passages here. This bell housing doesn't. So there's like a little pair of O-rings there and some fluid passages that this unit doesn't have. I'm going to keep pulling it down, keep learning, and make some comparisons between that and that one on the ground there out of the V6 trans to see if anything's interchangeable. How do I get this valve body off in one piece? That's the question. Straight off the bat, I'm just going to say this trans is nowhere near as clean inside as the Mazda one. So we got a few more discrepancies. Mazda gearbox has a nice Torrington bearing here. This has got like a plastic bush type thing and it's actually broken. And this casing has this solenoid in it. I don't know what that solenoid does, but the electronic one doesn't have that. Alright, so we got a few more differences. So I'll start from the front and work my way back. This part here that goes into the lockup converter, I think it goes into the lockup converter or lockup clutch or whatever. Different size spline, smaller spline on the VL one than on the Mazda one. This part in the front of the gearbox on the VL one has splines all the way around. On the Mazda one, it's got these two flat sections machined into it. This actually says 4NE in the front. I think that means electronic. This one just says 4N. This one's got those 2 oil passageways. Mazda one doesn't. On the Mazda one there's a solenoid here. On the VL one there's a location for it, but it's just blanked off. There's no actual solenoid. I'm guessing that's what the one in the bell housing does. If we flip them around, they both have the same number of oil passages in here. This one has like a plastic washer. This one has a Teardown bearing. So my school of thought at the moment is use this on the front of that. So use this with the mechanical trans body and that bell housing, but then I will have to stick with the Mazda converter, which I didn't really want to do, but I guess them's the brakes at the end of the day. Having ascertained that, I think I might pull this apart just to see what's inside it, because I can't use this. I don't think I can use this VL one anyway. So, because that would involve band sawing and TIG welding bell housings and stuff in half and welding them together. So, let's see what we can do before we have to take drastic measures. Ooh, ball bearings, bro. So, that ball bearing came out of there, I reckon. Don't lose it. We've got some kind of lock washer in here. Alright, now what? How does this come apart? So this is basically just another clutch pack. Another planetary by the looks of it. So some kind of Teardown. Drum and band doesn't look too bad. Another one of them plastic washers. Looks a bit flogged out and melted as well. Definitely don't want to be using that. Melty. Alright, so I've got to remove the guts of the trans now to change the output shaft. And I also want to have a look at all these clutch packs and everything, because the oil and stuff that's coming out is kind of dirty. I'm not feeling very confident about the condition of the inside of the gearbox, so here we go. Lots of metal. Alright, now the band should come out. Doesn't look too bad, although I don't really know what I'm looking at. I'm only making educated guesses. Drum doesn't look too bad. There's really not a lot to these once you start getting into them. I think just making sure that they all go back together the same way would be the key to success. Now, if I remember rightly, there's a circlip or something in here. I need my circlip pliers. There it is. There we go. Gotcha. So you can see the length difference in the two shafts. Everything else about them looks pretty similar. So there's a Torrington bearing in there. Should be able to just carefully put that back in. So I quickly cleaned up some bits, but I haven't got too carried away. I'm really just doing this to make sure that it's gonna work. Make sure that Torrington bearing's still in there. Now that output shaft should go in. Zang. Beautiful. Can I get that circle on? She's in. Alright, what's next? That planetary. I think it's... Right, now this... Looks like we got a few more differences. This has got a recess for the Torrington bearing, this one doesn't. So I'm guessing this has to go with that, if I'm going to use that. But also, will it work with the rest of this gear set? Alright. So, I'm going to use the band that's out of the electronic trans that goes with this drum. Looks pretty much the same. That goes in that way. That goes onto there. Oh, the band goes in last. I'm learning. Well, that all seems to fit. If this works, I think I'm going to be buying a rebuild kit. A, because I know how to do it. B, a lot of black shit in this trans, man. That goes that way. And that's got to push down in the back of that little thing. Don't worry, I'm gonna check them by hand. Alright, well obviously this needs to be cleaned up. And camera battery is about to go flat, so I think that might be it for tonight. I'll come back tomorrow. Alright, so you're probably noticing that I'm leaning on a basically assembled transmission. So, I had a pretty sleepless night the other night. Right after I stopped filming, I noticed a few things that basically wrecked my plan and started doing a lot of internet research. So the main thing that I found was I was going to use the N4AEL, or the electronic controlled factory V6 master trans bell housing and overdrive casing on the front of the VL gearbox. The main thing that I found right after I stopped filming the other night was an oil passage that's in the 4N71B. Sorry, that's in this, that's not in the 4N71B out of the VL. If you look closely, there's a little imprint there from where the hole is actually in the gasket, and that's where the hole is in the other trans, but in this trans, there's no hole there. So yeah, I kind of figured that it was going to be impossible because that oil passage obviously does something. So the other thing that I noticed is that the N4AEL, or the E4N71B, so this pump housing actually has E4N71B in the front of it, even though it's an N4AEL. There's probably some interchangeable parts to a point. It's actually a lot nicer trans. This has got more heavy duty stuff inside of it. The front drum, has got Torrington bearing. All of the stuff in here has got Torrington bearings, whereas the 4N71B has these like plastic Teflon style, I don't know what you would call them, bushes or whatever, instead of a Torrington bearing. So this is actually a much heavier duty trans. This gearbox, when I pulled it apart as well, was incredibly clean inside. And when I took the drum apart, I noticed one of the gaskets, I think I got it on the GoPro, it had like Transtech logos written all over it. So from that I can ascertain that at some point the trans must have been rebuilt or repaired in some way, because yeah, I doubt a factory Jatco gearbox built by Jatco would have a Transtech gasket. There was also silicone around the O-rings and stuff, and a few other things that led me to believe it had been apart at some point. So I've contacted the guy that I got this gearbox off, and he's going to give me the torque converter as well. So I keep the original torque converter with this gearbox. The last thing I've got to do is put the hydraulic valve body into this gearbox, and I think I figured out a way that I can do it. The electronic casing doesn't have the spot machined in it for the kickdown solenoid, but I found some really good information on the net about when you shift kit these, you unplug the kickdown solenoid. And these are pretty basic to shift kit. I'm not going to go into the details of how to shift kit them because people sell that and make money out of it as a business. And I'm not a trans guy, so I don't want to say, hey, do this, and then you go and do it to your gearbox, and your gearbox internally grenades itself. I did, however, find the information on Google, so if I found it, you can find it too. I did, just for a laugh, well, not really for a laugh, but for my own personal knowledge, I whipped the bell housing off the 3N71B. There's a huge difference between the thickness of the bell housings on the V6 and the VL and the 3N71B gearbox that I've got. There's also the torque converter's not as fat, so once you start talking into having to make adapters and crank spacers and stuff, you're getting into just put a Turbo 400 or a Power Glide in it, because it's not going to be worth, machining up adapter plates and stuff like that and spacers when you can do that with a Turbo 400 or a Power Glide. Or there's probably something off the shelf you can buy. There's probably a Jatco to Power Glide or Jatco to Turbo 400 adapter you can buy for the guys that put Turbo 400s and stuff in rotaries, behind rotaries. So yeah, there's that. And the other thing that I found out is that the aftermarket support is pretty limited on these. I had a chat to the Kiersk guy, who's a pretty renowned Jatco guy, and my phone's ringing. I had a chat to the Kiersk guy, who does a manual valve body, which for $660 changeover, which I thought was pretty good to fully manualize these. But he did also say that he doesn't do any aftermarket stuff for these anymore, and he just goes with the Jatco RE401A or whatever, which is apparently a much stronger trans. So yeah, like I said before, you start getting into putting a Turbo 400 or a Power Glide in it, or yeah, getting a better model Jatco like an RE401A or whatever they are, and seeing if this bell housing will go on that, and then getting that built up with billet servos and cast pans and trans brakes and all that kind of thing. So we'll see if this works, and if it doesn't, plan B. Alright, so that's about a wrap for today's episode. I've put the valve body and everything back in. I've gone to a point now where I need a new front seal, new rear main seal. I have to work out what I'm doing with the accumulator, because I need a certain type of accumulator that's thread-in for a 4N71B, but this has got a push-in style hole that has an O-ring and a retainer plate, so I might have to buy an accumulator and try and figure something out there. The guy I bought the trans off has said that he's got the torque converter, so I'm going to get the torque converter that goes with this trans. And then I've just got a hole here that has some wires going through it I've got to figure out how to block up. So I did some stuff with the valve body, you know, drilled some new holes and shimmed up some springs and stuff like that. And like I said, there's people out there that sell shift kits and stuff for these that make money, and I'm not going to tell you how to do it. And again, if you do it and you trans grenades, and you know, I don't want to be held responsible for that. So I did find the information on Google, so if you look hard enough, you can find it too. If you have any questions or anything, feel free to message me or send me an email, phil@bennettsgarage.com. I can't put the pan on yet because I need to TIG weld in the fitting for the trans temp gauge. While I'm at it, I'll probably TIG weld in a drain plug as well. And I'm out of gas, so I need to go get some more gas for the TIG welder, so that'll be in the next episode. I'll probably get the pan and everything fitted and put it in the car and see if it actually works. So yeah, thanks for watching. I would like to take this opportunity to invite you all over to my Patreon page. I've got a thing set up at the moment where I'm aiming to hit my goal of 1,000 subs and 100 patrons. So if you haven't liked and subscribed and comment, do it now. Check out my Patreon. You can sign up for $1, set and forget. I'll put your name in the videos. You'll say that you can be able to say that you were here from the beginning. And I'm currently editing a whole bunch of bonus content for the Patreon site, and I'll probably be putting a lot more videos on there than I do on YouTube. And I'll also be putting my YouTube episodes on there before I put them on YouTube, so you can get early access as well. So go check that out. And until then, like, comment, subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Hopefully this will bring some more skids.